Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Hi, this is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California. Our special guest today is in Jerusalem. And so this is really cool. This is our first broadcast from Jerusalem. This is Global TV Talk Show, a unit of globalbusinessnews.net, which has been around since '03. Google Analytics has measured 1.2 million audience page views, but more relevant, since we started this series, this reinvention, if you will, Global TV Talk Show in April of 2020, Google Analytics has measured a little over 110,000 audience page views from 100 countries, 70% US and Canada, 20% Europe, 9% Asia Pacific, 1% everywhere else. Let's welcome Dr. David Weiss. Welcome.
Hi,
again.
how are you, everybody?
Just great. So I want to ask you about the book behind you, Innovative Intelligence. This has been translated into Farsi and Chinese and has won acclaim and special mention from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Why is that?
Well, a lot of people are struggling with innovation throughout the world. And, I just recently posted on LinkedIn one about Doblin's way of looking at innovation and 10 different kinds of innovation that are relevant. People are struggling with innovation as something that is transforming the process. There it is. That's what the picture looks like on LinkedIn. It gets a lot of interest. Executives nowadays have to transform. We're dealing in a almost post-COVID environment. We have accelerated some changes that people were not anticipating, or that might have been in plans and 5-year kinds of plans. And now all of a sudden, customer demand, employee demand, and even the expectations of executives and how to lead has radically changed. So the book about innovative intelligence is talking about what kind of intelligence is the new intelligence leaders and executives need in order to be successful. And the answer is not they have to just be more innovative, but rather they have to be leaders of innovation, which means they have to be a leader who can draw out the innovative capacities of the organization in interacting with the customers, building agility, and actually to transform the organization in this rapidly changing times.
So innovation is not the CEO's job, but it's the CEO's job to get out of the way.
Or the CEO's job to be the energy that allows all the innovation to occur. It's not just getting out of the way. The CEO has to remove the barriers to make sure that that innovation can occur. But also the CEO, in many cases, they're working with boards and they're working with their own senior teams. And for example, a board of directors in many organizations is an underutilized innovative resource. Think about it. Innovation really often deals with things that occur outside of specific disciplines. It isn't like a sales area, but it's the combination of things that's really required to actually build good innovation. So you need diverse teams. There are two teams that tend to be, by design, diverse. One of them is a board. These are people coming in from all different places, all different perspectives, who either are paid or care about the organization, if it's a nonprofit and so on, and they should be leveraged to deal with the complexities of the challenges. And the second one is the executive team. That's a structural diverse team where people are representing everything from the purchasing to the production to the sales to the marketing to the HR, the finance, the IT, and they're all sitting there, and that's reporting into one individual. That group should be working on innovation as a collective. So it's not get out of your way, it's actually become a catalyst to make sure it occurs and leverage the groups that are set up to do that kind of thing.
Now, in this Doblin's chart, this infographic, it's kind of taking an engineering approach to something really creative. And so it breaks it down, but there's brand is one category of thinking, and then there's channel, and then I can't read the type, it's so small here on the phone.
Offerings, experience,
Right.
channel, all these various things. I think one of the important parts is that people are so attracted to devices like this. And they say innovation means product. And then you say, well, yes, a brilliant product is going to make a massive difference, but innovation could be a lot more. It could be customer experience. It could be the way you access the customer. It could be the way that you're actually leveraging through diversity, inclusion, and ways of allowing people to flourish within your own work environment. So, we need to spread out our understanding of what innovation is. And Doblin did a wonderful job of categorizing it into 10 spaces. There was this terrific research done by IBM that in a book they wrote called Rethinking Innovation, where they argued that the number one value in terms of revenue generation out of innovation is not product, but actually business model innovation. In other words, how the organization configures itself. So the same product with one business model will actually fail, while the product in another business model will actually be incredibly successful. And,
now, is this because more people? Is this because more people are allowed to fail?
It's sometimes that may be the case, but in innovation, we talk about the language of failure, and people often say, "Oh, we have to celebrate failure" and things like that. I've written about this topic, and I actually believe that rhetoric is something which people, somehow caught on to, but for many individuals, it's really hard to deal with it. Really, what we're talking about when they say we have to fail is we have to iterate. We have to be experimental. And when you're experimental and not wait until you get it perfect, but actually bring it out earlier, test it with the population you're dealing with, whether it's the public, the citizen, the customer, the employee, the student, the patient, whomever it is, and actually get feedback and co-design with others. And sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. That's not failure, but we call that failure because it's provocative. But I think it's a mistake using that word, because failure is, people deeply have an ingrained feeling that all through life, I don't want to fail. And now we're trying to change that language. What we really mean is iteration. What we really mean is experimentation. Bring it out into the open, experiment in the open, work with it, and then ultimately we'll keep on duck and weave, move and move, check it, go further, and then eventually the right pathway. And it'll speed up the process at the same time.
Speaking about pathways, I'm looking at the book behind you that's blue with looks like a white ribbon or a white highway.
Over there.
And that's over there, but it's my over there. So
there, that's it. It's these mirror images.
Yeah. So that's a pathway. We're talking about pathways.
This one here. This book
Exactly.
here is a book called The Leadership Gap, and it was really going after what was understood to be, at one point, a demographic problem that was occurring with a lot of people who were retiring, but ultimately became a leadership gap in the ability to handle uncertainty and ambiguity, where people were not able to successfully deal with things when it was clear. For example, most people, when they try to hire someone, they say, submit a resume. Simple thing. Well, what's a resume? A resume is all about your knowledge and your experience. What does that tell me about your real ability to deal with situations where there is no clear knowledge and when no one has the experience to deal with it? Are you able to deal with that? How do you handle that? How do you work with teams? How do you work with people to discover a pathway that actually might work? Do you handle that with reasonable emotional intelligence? The resume doesn't tell you anything like that. We need to expand our mindset when we're looking at leadership to actually be thinking about what eventually in a later book was called innovative intelligence, to say, how do you handle that complexity? How do you handle that uncertainty? And not just your knowledge and experience. Knowledge is actually becoming a shared resource. Now, I got more knowledge in this device than most people, than most countries have in their brains. So it's now about how you use it and how you deal with problems that we haven't seen before.
So, I'm blue skying here for a minute with you, and because we're both wearing blue shirts, but so the resume could become, or is there a way of categorizing it as a way of getting it accepted if it's an experiential
Right.
resume? Where somebody just tells a story rather than a list of, well, I graduated this and I did 4.0 and I did this and oh, by the way, I failed at some things too, and and then came back and reinvented myself, and I did that. That kind of thing would be more interesting as a read, but the hiring of the resume reviewer, whether it's a robot or some other person, they're not going to bother with that because it's too hard.
Possibly, but I think you're onto something. The power of stories and it is a very, very powerful way to surface what a person really does and how they struggle with things. For a while, we've known that you get a lot more mileage in an interview of someone if you're considering, for example, an executive. If you don't just, read a resume and have them answer what if questions, but rather if you ask them about what they did in situations. So they're relating what their experiences were. How did they handle a situation where no one knew exactly what to do? What were they dealing with a situation where there was conflict and how they responded to it? And they have to tell stories. And by virtue of telling stories, you get a much deeper appreciation of what they're likely to do in the future, rather than something that's well prepared and groomed to kind of meet your expectations. It's tougher to fake a story. And ultimately, a lot of people are moving towards stories as a way to capture a little bit more about handling complexity. How do you handle the emotionally intense times? Do you actually respond to it appropriately, or does it affect your decision making? And that is much more valuable than just focusing on knowledge and experience.
So I'm looking at this chart again, this 10 types of innovation, and on the top is reddish, on the blue, and the blue is, so it's light and then dark. Does that have anything to do with anything?
I think we could probably creatively make something up. I think it's simply just to distinguish between the categorizations. What's neat about that chart, if you go to, everybody watching, you're invited to connect with me on LinkedIn. I send out weekly things that I know Ed, chimes in, and it's a pleasure to have Ed in that conversation. At david.weiss@weissinternational.ca. So by all means, chime in, get into the conversation. That was a post that I just put out. What I liked about it, Dublin, in the way that they reported out, is in 10 areas. This one did a nice job of breaking it into 3 buckets. And by virtue of doing that, it becomes a little more approachable. Rather than a list of 10. A list of 10 is really hard to remember, but now if we can categorize it under 3 clusters, it starts making a little sense. So there are 4 of them that are experience-based, there's some that's offering-based, and some that are product-based, and by virtue of dividing it up that kind of way, it becomes easier to access. So I think the colors are just differentiating it.
Yeah, so you have brand, and you have channel. So what is the brand? What the brand culture?
Well, the ability to be innovative in the experience of the customer, to become loyal to a brand. We've seen that a lot with loyalty points. That's been a massive innovation in the last 10 years, 12 years, where people are saying, I'll go to that brand, even though it's somewhat equally good to the other one, but I get another benefit from it. People have, through various marketing efforts, this has been around a long time, but even more creative ways through social media have leveraged brand as making something desirable that puts it on that tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell says, that all of a sudden that becomes the thing that everybody wants. It's tapping into the emotion of the recipient of the brand. It's not about the brand from the organization looking out, but it's the experience of the customer and what is their visceral, their emotional experience of your organization. And if the brand speaks to that, then it might generate a lot of loyalty. And when you're innovative in that space of the outside in perspective, you have a great potential to build value for your organization.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a timely announcement.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we're researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times, there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
So another aspect that I'm doing it from memory now is the channel. So in other words, the usefulness.
Yeah. So, we've seen this a great deal. So for example, I was working with an insurance company and they were asking the question about, right now their insurance goes through brokers. So they underwrite it. In other words, they basically assess risk, they price it, they build in the formula, and then a broker is the one you're dealing with. But what if the broker goes the way of the travel agent? Will that company be able to retain its value to the customer without an intermediary if the customer starts expecting they don't need to deal with an intermediary because they can do this themselves online, just like we book our own flights in the days when we book flights and those kinds of things. And the channel, when it radically changes, if you're going to be the one who gets ahead of it and disrupts the entire industry by creating that alternative channel and customers like it, and if you're not ready for it, you're in deep trouble. Just one thought more on that one. We worked with a diverse group in that organization, and actually 2 of the largest brokers, the presidents of the organizations of the brokerages, not the insurance company. So the ones that basically were selling their product in addition to other products to customers, they decided to join our diverse team that was working on what should be the position of this company if in fact the broker's role was sidestepped into a new channel. And the question was asked, why would you do that? Aren't you designing your own demise? I mean, basically you're design. And they said, if it's going to happen, I can't stop it. It's going to happen. If that channel disrupts, I'll try to retain it. But if it disrupts, I want to have a solution where I can still create value in a new channel. So I need to understand what might be this new channel and how I can evolve my business to be able to participate effectively in a new way of working in a new channel.
So this is called strategic planning, right? And thinking of
absolutely
options. What ifs?
Clearly.
Absolutely.
But we're getting into deeper what ifs. In the old days, strategic planning would be, how do I gain competitive advantage against the competition? And nowadays, you're not competing with the competition anymore. You're competing with the mind of the customer. If I'm in a business that, right now is kind of cumbersome, but they're dealing with Amazon and they're purchasing things and they're getting things, they say, why can't you be like Amazon? Even though it's not your industry. And they're saying, well, I can imagine that you should be able to get it to me within a day if I'm Amazon Prime. And why do I have to wait a week? And then someone out there is asking that question as well, and will find a way to modify the channel. And they may, if they build it right, have an opportunity to get rapid growth because there's a need, a pain point for the customer that ultimately, the industry isn't willing to change because they're in collusion kind of in their own, let's be competitive with each other, when the reality is you're in competition on the mind of the customer. It's the customer's mind that now doesn't see boundaries of industries anymore. We see ecosystems. We see, everything merging together, and you've got to be able to think that way to develop good strategy.
May I ask you a non-political question? It's going to sound political, but it's not, all right?
Okay.
But it's just following up on what you just said. And it's not a zinger. I mean, it's just applying what you were just talking about. Okay, here it is. Getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated.
Okay.
So the government, let's just say President Biden, all right?
Okay.
The government in the US.
Yes, of course.
Yesterday on the news, CNN in particular, said, did a thing on the people who are now impacted by the variant, the Delta variant in COVID. 99.9% have not been vaccinated. And the people who are getting sick from the Delta variant who have had some kind of a vaccination is like not even 0.2%. I mean, that is so blaringly clear, the value, thank heavens, that the vaccine has worked, that so the customers are out there, the people who have whatever shtick is going on in their body or head. They said, I'm not getting the vaccine because of whatever. All right. So how can a President Biden, say in the government role, who's the producer, let's just say, or the sales guy, the broker, get people, the customers, to accept the product, especially when it's free?
Part of the beauty of democracy is also its weakness. If I was in a country where there was an authoritarian ruler and they'd say everyone's getting vaccinated whether you like it or not, you'd get vaccinated. But, in the United States of America, the beauty of the individual rights of democracy in most cases works really well. In situations like vaccinations, this is not the first situation where people have chosen not to be vaccinated. There are people who didn't want to vaccinate their children for chickenpox, there were chickenpox parties. There were, people were worried about vaccinations for a variety of reasons. And, this is not a new problem. And this is a good example of brand innovation. How do you ultimately build the brand of vaccination to make it cool to get vaccinated, so that it's almost like if you're not getting vaccinated, you're really in the out crowd, and the cool thing is to get vaccinated. And we have some brilliant social marketing people in the United States, and there is attempts to do this. It's not that it's not happening, but the beauty of having individual choice comes at a cost at these times, where some individuals, according to the way of the country, could choose not to be vaccinated, and you can't force them to get vaccinated, even though the evidence is absolutely clear. We are so lucky. We are in magical times. Who would have really thought that we would get a vaccination and multiple vaccinations that pretty much everybody can take now twice, and it works, and it doesn't hurt you. And ultimately, people still say, I'm not going to do it. This is like a polio vaccine. It really, really works. And
it's a miracle.
So congratulations to the pharma companies. They deserve what they're earning on it. And I think the whole world needs to be vaccinated. And hopefully we'll be getting there. It's so interesting. You mentioned I'm in Jerusalem. I grew up in New York. I live in Toronto, and I'm now in Jerusalem for the summer doing work here. what do they do in this country? So I have had my second vaccination, but they require, if you enter the country, that you go into quarantine for 2 weeks, which is standard in most countries. However, you could take what's called a serologic test, which is a test of your antibodies, that if you have above 500 or so, then you are obviously got the antibodies that the 2 vaccines should have given you, and therefore you can get out of quarantine early. So, all of a sudden we're seeing, oh, that's so interesting. Why aren't we more people doing that? And testing and saying, well, do you have the antibodies or not? And it's just another test. We've been testing all over the place. And so, right now I'm out of quarantine and it's a wonderful thing. So, we need to be more creative, go back to that innovative mindset about how to handle things and use that brand innovation to get people to really believe that this strength of this vaccine is really good, and tip the curve even further to get more people willing to get vaccinated. We should have 80% vaccinated. Get that herd immunity as soon as possible.
So thank you. Let's move on to another topic which is not rehearsed, just in case you out there in the world think this is staged. It's not. Zoom, this thing. And let's talk about it for online education purposes, not only for old timers like me, but for the kids who, how can it, I'm not asking for answers from you, but just discussion. How can the Zoom or online learning be made better to help kids if they have access to high speed? That's another question. And strong internet. How can they learn better using this system, which is so obvious as an answer for getting kids to be more self-sufficient and to learn how to do things, even if it's only rudimentary, rather than go totally left behind from an education development point of view?
So let me come at this from a slightly circuitous way and start with adults, and then I'll come to the kids. One of my practices, as you know, is executive coaching. So, I do a great deal of coaching. With Zoom, during COVID, executive coaching grew dramatically. And you'd ask yourself, why would executive coaching actually be a preferred approach to use on Zoom, or whether it's MS Teams or WebEx or whatever you're going to use? And the answer is, interestingly enough, for the coach doesn't want to travel a half hour, an hour to see someone, or and to be the coach. And the person being coached doesn't want me, every so often to come into the office and they say, who's this person that's coming to my office? And they don't want that either. So all of a sudden, this interaction that you and I are having, if it would be a coaching environment, becomes a better interaction than face-to-face. That doesn't mean that I shouldn't meet someone one time, but as an ongoing process, we get as much value this way as before. So what do teachers do? Teachers work with students and they ultimately work collectively. Now, it is tough when you have a lot of kids and it requires a lot of creativity, but what about the one-on-one time that teachers spend with kids? Now, the kid who comes back to work one-on-one with a teacher has to go to a teacher's office usually. It's really heavy. It's sometimes you're seen. All of a sudden, this becomes a privacy issue. And it can be done, the teacher, much more process efficient for the teacher. The teacher doesn't have to sit in a classroom or sit in an office waiting for students to come. They're coming when they want to come. You now electronically can book your appointment. The teacher knows when they're going to be seeing people, when they're not. They could have done that in the classroom or in their office too, but we can build in efficiencies and actually remove stigma at the same time and get value. So on a one-on-one way, just like in that executive coaching space, which by the way knows no geography. When I'm in Toronto, I'm coaching people in Texas, in California, in New York. I'm coaching people anywhere in the world. Doesn't make a difference because it's just like we are talking now. Same thing with teachers. So I think there's great potential. And we just have to open our eyes to say, well, where does this really add value, even when we go back to the classroom, where it's actually better than face-to-face?
This is great. Thank you. And we'll want to go deeper at another time, another broadcast. But just last night, Joanne was asking me, so when are you going to do a live meeting again? Not only because we had 25 years of doing live meetings, and then it crashed and burned on March 1, 2020. And so then we learned how to innovate or iterate to be on TV, and bring people together. And then I began looking around through my contact lists for people in India and China and Taiwan and wherever, and send them email or linked messages. And then all of a sudden they're in a meeting with me on TV, and that would never happen if they had to pay or if I had to pay to go there. And so I said to Joanne, I'm not sure I want to do that, but I know that I should do at least a hybrid thing.
Yeah, and I was just asked recently, we were planning on doing a strategy session. So another thing I do is I facilitate a lot of executive meetings to get them to think differently, to come up with different ideas anywhere in the world, really. And this one was local, and they said, you know what, why don't we do the second meeting that we had face-to-face? And I sat there and I said, it's a good idea. Was everybody vaccinated? It goes back to that question, are people willing to disclose if they all had 2 vaccines? And then the other question came up that I started reflecting on is, everybody says, oh, COVID was so terrible, but I think there's an element of loss that's going to happen if, in fact, we have to go back to the classroom, we have to go back to that meeting. You're not going to be able to hold that meeting with everybody all of a sudden together. If, in fact, the standard becomes don't do that, which I hope doesn't occur. I mean, I hope we don't lose it. We have really made a significant shift in the way we interact. And it would be a mistake to waste a good crisis. We had a good crisis. It's been horrible.
Yeah.
The executives that are really having trouble are the ones that are actually getting into a situation where they are waiting for the moment where they can get everybody back in the office so that they can run the business the way they always knew how to do it, instead of embracing a new alternative, which that's right. Is what's happening.
They're not trained. They're not mentally prepared to deal with a Zoom kind of interaction.
And they have to learn really fast, because I think employees will demand it.
Younger ones for sure. So Gen Z, grandkids, so who are just graduating college or just about to. I've got 2 of them. So, and they are upset with what me as a boomer has given them in the world, pollution and strife and, built-in non-diversity things, as well as on the other side, opportunities to do more with D&I. And that's the future. It's now. It's not going to be 10 years from now. It's right now. And the crisis and utilizing tech is right up their alley. And they're the leaders coming on strong. And there's a lot of them. There's more of them than of us, according to the demographers. Huge.
Yeah, I love the sense of dissatisfaction as a motivator. So give them the opportunity, let them fix this world and make it environmentally safer. Let's see if they can pull it off. We certainly dreamed about it and wanted it. When we were their age, we weren't saying, oh, let's pollute, let's pollute, let's pollute. That wasn't the vision. The vision was, let's do pretty much what they want to do. We didn't have the technology that they have that gives a real leverage. So my answer is, make your own music. You don't have to listen to, old music. Write your own music, write your own story, change the world, take leadership roles, get politically active, don't step away, step in, and actually make a difference. This is really your time. You have something that other generations don't have, and you should be able to just grab it, write your own song and make sure you're heard because you have a good voice.
David Weiss, Dr. David Weiss, thank you. I'm honored to have you on Global TV again. Please come back again.
It's a pleasure.
Maybe in a month or so, whenever is good for you, from wherever you are in the world.
Okay.
This has been a real learning experience. Why don't you recite your website?
Yeah, so the website for the firm, which by the way has a free articles tab, there's about 50 articles that I wrote, some on complexity, on scenario planning and uncertain times, a lot of stuff on innovation, leadership, and human resources, and chapters from my 7 books and stuff. And they're free for download. Go there. It's called under the tab free articles. The website's www.weissinternational.ca. WEISS international.ca for Canada. And you can check me out on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Love to have you connected and, keep learning. This is a great time for personal growth. And for all of us, it'll actually make the world a bit better.
And thank you. So you mentioned this antibody research and testing going on in Israel. Is this required by the government?
Only for people who want to get out of the quarantine early. So, but it is interesting because there are people who have had 2 vaccines where it didn't work as well as others, and they find out through the test that in fact they don't have the antibodies that they thought they did.
How is the test done? Is it a nasal thing or a what?
It's a blood test.
So they just draw blood out. That's right.
That's what it is. But it's fascinating if you think about it, because there's a way to know, did it work? And it works for well over 95% or so, but for a few it doesn't. And it's worthwhile to actually know your immunity, in essence, to COVID. And I'd encourage everybody to get vaccinated, be safe, be healthy, encourage your friends to get vaccinated as well.
So one last thing, what's the remedy if it's insufficient antibodies?
So you should speak to your doctor and get advice on it. But if in fact you did that serologic test, it's SCROLOGIC, and you find out that the antibodies are low, your doctor may recommend getting a booster shot, another vaccine. And there may be some other remedy, but you should speak to a medical professional and get advice.
Have a wonderful
if in
day
fact you choose to find out
and stay safe.
Great. Okay, thanks for being on Global TV. See you again soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.